Welcome to another Learn and Save Masterclass. Today we're going to be talking about EV charging and some of the complexity and regulation changes that people need to consider and think about before they're installing EV chargers in their home or their workplace. I'm joined by two experts in the space. Simon here, who manages the EV or e-mobility team here at Simon Blaaser, and from Joe from ABB. So Joe, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your role at ABB, and I also understand you're helping shape the thinking around this with your work in the UK.
Hi Mark, and thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm the product marketing specialist at ABB e-mobility UK Limited, which means I'm the product specialist. I do a lot of early customer engagement and specification and support customers in selecting the right charging infrastructure. The second part of my role is that I am vice chair of BEMA's EV infrastructure group, which is a group that represents EV charge point manufacturers in the UK and engages with government and government bodies in helping to develop legislation and new developments in standardisation.
They're really interesting. So you're at the cutting edge of the product development and shaping. ABB, I know who ABB is because obviously they're a partner with Save Money Cut Carbon, but just tell our audience a little bit about who ABB is. Huge organisation and has been at the forefront of charging for some time now.
Yes, that's right. So ABB as a wider organisation has been going for around about a century in one guise or another. And the bit of the company I work for, e-mobility, has been around since around about 2010. We're a global market leader and we're present in around about 85 countries around the world. And you will see our chargers on the motorway network. So if those of you that are driving EVs, we've got most of the motorway network covered through GridServe, and we're supplying to lots of those charge point operators, so others being BP, Shell, and EV Point and others like that. Fantastic,
really interesting. Simon, I'm going to come over to you. Obviously, you look after e-mobility, the team here at Save Money Cut Carbon. What sort of challenges are you seeing in your role with the ever-moving and complexity around this subject matter?
The biggest issue we find at the minute is the regulations change on a regular basis. We are looking now, different regulations for different scenarios, but we're looking now at sort of every 6 months as a new regulation comes in for a different part of e-mobility now, whether that be destination charging or what we call charging as a revenue generating service, or workplace or domestic.
And what does that mean? So if I'm a customer thinking about EV, why is it important for me to understand these regulatory changes?
Well, certainly with the latest changes within the public charging regulations, these are kind of being pushed out by the Secretary of State, and it's going to be monitored from a government level. So if you are providing a service and you're not adhering to the regulations, the government are going to come down on you and you won't be able to offer that charging as a revenue generating service, for example.
What does that mean, Joe, at a product level? I mean, how are you keeping ahead of the regulations?
Because we're present in so many different countries, we've got to be aware of changes in legislation across lots of different countries, which hasn't exactly been simplified by Brexit, because before we would be following EU legislation, and now there are some specific pieces of legislation that pertain only to the UK. So for example, smart charging legislation, which came into effect at the end of December 2021, that relates to the operation of private chargers, so in residential and in workplace. Now, those are specific to the UK, so we had to take an existing product and change and modify the firmware and the apps there to make them suitable for the UK market. Now, the big things there are making sure that energy isn't taken by EV chargers at peak times for other things. So we don't want to be charging cars when the heating is on at full whack, for example. So we shift charging to quieter times of day. But the benefit to businesses there is often the energy is also cheaper.
Okay, so there's regulatory things that have to be embedded in the product. So if I was thinking now about an EV charger now, I understand some of the regulatory changes have advanced again just before Christmas. What were those changes?
The smart charging legislation is to do with private charging.
Okay.
And then you've got the
private charging being me charging at home effectively.
Yeah, or charging
at workplace, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got a number of chargers here, for example, so that would fall under the smart charging legislation. The second piece of legislation that came out is more about the public experience and improving the public's experience. So the government is setting parameters to make sure that that improves and that you've got more reliability. So, for example, one thing that's brought in with that is making sure that people can pay with contactless payment cards at a public charge point and not having to download an app for this charge point operator and download another app for another charge point.
So that's me. I turn up and I've got the wrong app and it doesn't quite work. So you're trying to, so at a regulatory level, we're trying to make that easier for the end user to turn up, plug in, blip on their credit card or whatever, and get what they're paying for.
So the idea is that anybody who has got a contactless payment method should be able to set up at any charge point, public charge point, and use that charger without having to download an app or write off for an RFID tag. And that legislation also is aimed at making it easier to find charge points, identify whether those charge points are in working order or not. But there's also a mandate there for those charge point operators to ensure that they've got high levels of uptime. So there's a mandate in there to achieve 99% average uptime across an entire network. So making us manufacturers work harder, making the operators work harder, but all about improving confidence for members of the public so that you see a higher uptake of
range
EVs.
Anxiety starts to hopefully disappear and we start to move. And are these changes in now or coming in the future?
The legislation came into effect on the 24th of November, but companies have got a period of time to achieve compliance with various aspects of it. For example, chargers that are above 8 kilowatts and below 50 kilowatts, if they're installed now, they need to have contactless payment methods available by the end of November, so 12 months after the legislation came into effect. Anything in those power ranges that was installed prior to the legislation coming in is exempt. On the other hand, anything that's public facing and 50 kilowatts or above will have to retrofit payment terminals.
So there's a level of complexity there that if I put it in before and I'm the lower charge speeds, I'm okay for now.
Yes.
If I'm the higher charge speeds, I've got to retrofit. And if I'm putting something in looking forward, it's definitely something I need to think about. Simon, what does that mean for your customers effectively?
When we're sort of taking people on the journey and we're finding out that they want to look at destination charging or revenue generating charging, then what we find is we make them aware of that. We build that within, whenever we build a specification or design a system, we build in contactless payment, we build in, all the capabilities around the contactless payment, and we make sure all the chargers and the contactless payment and the back office software are all integrated and work. So we've gone out, we've done the hard work, basically finding the right kit, the right software, and then the right payment solutions, and bringing all that together. So it's not something from a customer perspective they need to worry about. We've worried about that, and we've built the solutions for it. So
Simon, thanks for that insight. So Joe, my final question I think is, you obviously on the inside of thinking about some of this from a manufacturing point of view. What do you see coming over the horizon? Do you think the legislation is now where it needs to be, or is there more to come from a legislation point of view? And is there any trends you see in the technology as a whole that is going to help and drive the adoption of EV, decarbonisation, and as you said, from an end user point of view, maybe remove this kind of anxiety that I'm going to run out of charge or I'm going to get to the charger, it doesn't work?
From a legislation point of view, the government are fairly reluctant to push too far, but they reserve the right to introduce more. They see this rightly as a young industry and believe that if we over-legislate, then you're going to stifle innovation, and some smaller players that might have done really interesting and clever things might be put off entering the market altogether. So with other areas such as existing public car parks, they did a consultation last year about should we legislate to make sure that these car parks are all fitted with chargers, and they're taking the attitude at the moment, we want to see more happening, but we're not going to legislate for now. If things don't move quickly enough, then we reserve the right to legislate further in the future. What we have seen recently is a focus on public charging, getting more public chargers in, and rightly so. There haven't been enough, and there's still not enough. There's still work to be done. Then as we move more people to EVs, we're more likely to have queues at these public charge points. So what we actually need to do is get in more residential, we need to get in more workplace charge points, and for those that can't charge at home, we need to see more on-street charging. The idea being that the majority of drivers are doing short journeys. So if we allow those people to charge at home or at work, then that keeps the public chargers free for those that are travelling longer journeys and really need to use infrastructure midway between point A and point B.
So it sounds like it's quite a holistic approach, and it seems like don't say this very often, the government seems to be quite pragmatic in its thinking to allow kind of entrepreneurial businesses, people like Simon and his team to drive the journey forward, but also just giving you a little nudge and making sure we're not going down the wrong path. Brilliant. So that's the end of another masterclass where we've talked a little bit about EV legislation and some of the considerations that you should think about if you are thinking about EV charging in all the different places, the home, in the workplace and in destination if you're doing that. If you have any further questions with masterclasses, just click the link and put the question in, and we're happy to answer that. But I've just got to finish by thanking Joe. Thank you very much for your insight, both as a big manufacturer around the world and in helping shape the legislation in the UK. And Simon, thank you for arranging this masterclass. Obviously, always driven by the questions you're being asked every day by customers, going, do I need to worry about this? Do I not? Which is what always drives us to shoot one of these videos. Gents, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.